Long before humans began writing down our history, the geography of the Earth looked entirely different. Beneath the waves of our modern oceans lie the remnants of a world we are only beginning to reconstruct. A massive, theoretical landmass once stretched across the Pacific, intended to connect regions that are now thousands of miles apart. This search for a sunken world began as a practical necessity for 19th century science. In the 19th century, researchers were hard at work cataloging the natural world and mapping out the evolutionary tree. They hit a snag, however, when they began classifying ancient primate remains, specifically the fossils of early lemurs. These distinct fossilized bones were heavily concentrated in the isolated island ecosystem of Madagascar. Yet researchers found nearly identical skeletal records thousands of miles to the northeast, right in the middle of the Indian subcontinent. The distance was an issue, but the real problem was the land in between. There was no trace of these specific primates in the vast expanses of Africa or the Middle East. To explain how a small animal could exist in two places separated by an ocean, scientists proposed a straightforward geological solution. They hypothesized a massive land bridge had once connected the two regions, and they named it Lemuria. The lost continent was a functional placeholder, drawn on a map to solve a problem with the fossil record. Decades later, our understanding of geology caught up. The discovery of plate tectonics proved the continents themselves had moved, carrying the fossilized remains with them. The land masses of India and Madagascar were once joined as part of a supercontinent. There was never a need for a sunken bridge. While the science was discarded, the concept of a vast submerged world remained in the minds of writers and explorers. The erasure of Lemuria from the geology textbooks left behind a massive, empty space on the map, a blank canvas for human imagination. The idea resonated because it echoed a common theme in human history. Across the globe, widely separated cultures share traditions of entire territories being swallowed by the sea. Ancient Hindu manuscripts detail vast landmasses that were destroyed and rebuilt as part of cosmic cycles. In the Pacific, Polynesian oral histories trace their lineage back to sacred ancestral homelands that eventually slipped beneath the waves. Similarly, indigenous island traditions throughout the region speak clearly of ancient cultures that were erased entirely by rising tides. The fossil theory was a mistake, but the location it proposed matches the setting of these ancient stories. This overlap suggests that 19th century scientists may have inadvertently given a modern name to a much older, shared tradition of a lost world. As the 20th century approached, esoteric groups took that discarded scientific framework and built an entire civilization on top of it. According to these traditions, the Lemurians were a spiritual, utopian society that operated in equilibrium with the natural environment. Their accounts describe a people who relied heavily on telepathic communication rather than the spoken word. They are said to have constructed massive stone cities aligned with the Earth's natural energy grids, powering their infrastructure with crystal technology. In less than a century, a technical attempt to map primate fossils had been fully transformed into a telepathic, crystal-powered utopia. Whether these descriptions are speculative fiction, a misinterpretation of older myths, or a distorted grain of truth, they continue to captivate historians and seekers. The word Lemuria has outgrown the maps it was initially drawn on and evolved into an enduring symbol for a world that time forgot. The scientific land bridge proposed by Victorian naturalists has been dismantled, but the search for what might actually be hiding at the bottom of the Pacific is only beginning. One moment, a thriving ancient civilization stood tall. The next, the ocean violently folded over itself, consuming everything. Mountains ruptured from the inside out. Earthquakes shattered the bedrock, while dark ash quickly choked out the remaining daylight. Floodwaters swept across the landscape with brutal force. Entire regions of the continent vanished entirely beneath the crushing, dark waves. When the waters finally settled, the vast expanse of Lemuria was gone. Only a handful of jagged, isolated islands remained scattered across an otherwise empty horizon. This total physical erasure created an immediate crisis for the few who escaped. Without a homeland, their accumulated knowledge, centuries of observation, philosophy, and science, was now entirely unmoored, highly vulnerable to being lost permanently. Those who managed to survive the cataclysm had no choice but to navigate away from the wreckage. They boarded vessels and sailed outward into the unknown, desperately seeking new, stable shores. This map traces the alleged migration paths. Lines radiate outward from the ocean void, terminating at South America, India, Egypt, and Polynesia. Rather than building a new empire, refugees integrated into local populations, acting as cultural seeds and influencing these distant civilizations. The teachings they carried were intensely focused on the inner world. They shared complex philosophies built around living in ecological harmony, maintaining mental balance, and expanding human consciousness. By tracing these shared philosophies across different continents, researchers attempt to tie the diverse spiritual traditions of the ancient world back to a single point of origin, one shared traumatic exodus. As centuries passed, the physical remnants of Lemuria stayed buried beneath miles of ocean. Without ruins or artifacts to anchor the stories, the oral history of the continent began to fray. This timeline illustrates a compelling parallel between Lemuria and Atlantis. Both prehistoric cultures suffer a sudden, catastrophic drop-off, disappearing from the historical record. Without hard physical proof, the literal history dissolved entirely into spiritual tradition, passed down strictly through myth. Modern mystics argue that this transition was intentional. They suggest the core elements of Lemurian philosophy didn't disappear at all, but remain secretly encoded within the foundational texts of surviving ancient religions today. Faced with the total destruction of their physical world, the survivors ensured their culture outlived their geography. They transformed their collected wisdom into a spiritual legacy that could survive long after the land itself was gone. Today, the geological consensus is absolute. Modern science firmly rejects the idea that a massive continent like Lemuria ever existed in the Indian or Pacific Oceans, pointing to the slow mechanics of plate tectonics as proof. Yet, deep beneath the surface, ocean explorers routinely uncover massive, unexplained stone anomalies that challenge our historical timelines. Every time an expedition captures images of these submerged geometric structures, it reignites the debate. Despite the firm conclusions of geologists, these ambiguous underwater ruins keep humans curious about the blind spots in Earth's history. This leaves Lemuria occupying a unique space in modern culture. For some, it is a literal sunken civilization waiting to be mapped, while for others, it serves as a powerful psychological symbol, representing everything humanity has forgotten. Whether it was a physical reality swallowed by the sea, or an enduring myth built to explain our shared origins, the legend of Lemuria continues to captivate us. The continent may be gone, but its mystery remains permanently anchored beneath the waves.